This program is brought to you by the Media Liberty Alliance Foundation in cooperation with OBBM Network TV, bringing citizen-led, creative local media to the forefront of local communities to foster a greater understanding of constitutional liberty and appreciation of what makes us truly free, starting with you and me.
The Zach Ratliff Show is brought to you by Mortgage Financial in Texarkana, Texas, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That way you're updated each time fresh content comes out. And thank you for being part of the Zach Ratliff Show. Hello and welcome to the Zach Ratliff Show. I'm Zach. It's my buddy Joe.
What's going on?
Man, Joe, thanks for coming in here, dude.
I'm excited.
You've been on a journey, man.
And I have been on a crazy journey, and it's only been about 8 months now, 7 or 8 months.
You know, here's what's funny that I was trying to explain to somebody about, and I'll let you kind of get into what you're doing, where we are and stuff. But, you know, it's been on a journey of, is the Bible true? What's it based on?
Right.
You know, where does faith come from? That kind of stuff is what I'm feeling that you're going through, and I'll let you talk about that. And like I told you before we started rolling, anyone that can't have their faith questioned, that's a problem. We should be able to now. Am I going to know every answer to what you say? Absolutely not.
Right.
Is that okay?
I think so.
Absolutely. Because I don't think I know it all. I know I don't. I'm not. But what I think is funny is I was telling somebody about when you came into our church one day, and the fire department shows up, and I'm like, they knew you were coming.
Yeah. I think somebody set that up. Somebody called for him. Hey, send the boys in.
Yeah. Like, I see you walking. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? And then I see the fire department, and then like a light's on fire. I'm like, this is getting intense real fast.
Yeah, signs. I don't ignore signs.
Yeah, I don't know if this is meant to be.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Kind of give an intro, who you are, what you do, and a lot of people know you from your show. A lot of people don't.
Man, so I'm Joe Teel. I have the Joe Teel podcast. I also have the Joe Teel morning show here in town, where I interview local people. I try to shine a light on the community. Different to contrary to public opinion, I do not work for the devil. I am actually just
knowingly.
But no, I try to help the community. I try to be a good dude. Try to do the things. But my show originally was interviewing people. Now it's taken a big pivot, and my first episodes of the new rollout are actually coming this week.
Oh, are they? Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So I'm starting off with Brandon Cowan, which you've had on here before.
Yeah, absolutely.
We set up an outside setup and shot by fire.
Which one of you fell out of a chair?
That was that one. Yeah, I was in my chair. Like we were out in the woods, and we make this fire, and we make this set, and we're in the middle of the woods. It's so cool. It's awesome looking. And right before we start, I was rocking in a chair, and I didn't realize I was on a stick, and it wasn't a rocking chair. And I went back and never came forward.
Kept going, baby.
So,
what's funny about getting to know you and getting to know Brandon? We grew up on the same street.
Yeah,
just completely different ends.
Yeah,
of
just
it.
different ends. Yeah, I never knew.
It's like you're telling me where you live. I'm like, I know where that is. Like, and then all of a sudden where you're like, oh, I know where that is. I'm like, oh, we grew up on the same street.
Yeah, the same road. Yeah, man. So I'm into the Bible now. So this is not the first time I've been to the Bible in my life. You know, yeah. I was actually a youth pastor.
Okay.
I had a really radical moment. I felt like that was a real moment at the time, back in 2012, and I was a youth pastor around 2014-ish, 15-ish until the end of 2016.
Okay.
Didn't
so a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah. Didn't like the direction it was going. So then I stepped away from it. I found a really hard time finding a new community after being like a part of this community. Like that church, I have put probably 100,000 free hours of labor into this church, just different things, just, and, it wasn't about getting paid or none of that. What I'm saying is that that was my people. And then I got to the stage where I was like, oh man, these aren't my people anymore. And it was sad, but I didn't know what to do, so then that went me a long time without anything.
I went to, I lived on campus at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary.
Wow.
And I did not graduate from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary because I'm not a church person. I just because of some of the way people would treat you and different things. I never questioned my faith so much as the people I was around. I'm like, I don't know, man. And that's just the case. So I can kind of understand what you're saying. Like, man, I put a lot into this, but some doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I had some bad experiences, but I do want to preface this, like the stuff I'm bringing today. I don't want people to get thinking that I'm church hurt, and that is the whole sole reason behind that.
Because that's the first thing somebody will say. Oh, you got the church hurt.
Yeah, so I'm not. I've dealt with this over the years. The Bible, it was actually podcasts where every once in a while a guest I like would bring somebody on to talk about the Bible, and I say, well, because when I did study it, I studied it. When I was a youth pastor, I really I walked around with the Bible. I loved the Bible.
Yeah,
it was everything, and so then these guests start coming on these big famous shows, like Wes Huff would come here, then Alex O'Connor on the other side would come here, and then I kind of got in like their beefs a little bit, the apologist and the other guys have the beef, and then so it's like I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. I was like, so I wonder what is actually going on there. This is my entire childhood, my entire teenage years. All that stuff.
Did you kind of get to the point where it's like, do I believe this or was I taught to believe this?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, because that's what a lot of people go through, right?
Right. And so that's perfect. Thank you. As I speak today, we start getting into examples of stuff I've learned, stuff I've been going through. I want to keep that in mind that I'm not here to disprove the Bible. I'm not here to try to deconvert people. I'm not trying to do any of this. Yeah. I'm just saying that when I looked into the Bible, this is 100% sure. Not what I'm going to say, but my feelings are 100% sure on this. It's not what I thought it was growing up. And that was shattering.
Well, it's kind of a smart aleck thing to say. But I often say, well, I'm the world's foremost authority on my opinion.
Right.
And you can be that on yours.
Yeah.
Can't anybody tell you don't feel that way.
Right.
I mean, because that's where it is. One of the, talking about the apologists versus other people, and I've referenced it on this show before, but one of the better debates that I've seen was 2010 or 11, okay? Mm-hmm. And it was William Lane Craig.
Yep.
Versus Christopher Hitchens.
Oh yeah, that would have been like Super Bowl.
It was strong, baby.
Like yeah.
And so people on campus were like, "Oh, Craig, wiped the floor with him." And from a strictly format-based debate, yeah, you could say, "Oh, well, that was a red herring, or that was this fallacy, or that was this," and it was. However, just a normal guy watching the debate, I got to class and I'm like, Hitchens wiped the floor with him.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? But I'm like, all that doesn't matter. Hitchens walked him.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but what about this fallacy? I'm like, it doesn't matter. All that, nobody's sitting at home going, oh, I caught this fallacy. They're like, Hitchens won that debate. Now, did I agree with what William Lane Craig said? Yes. Right. Did he win that debate? No.
It's like I like to listen to a lot of debates. I like old Bart Ehrman, which is going to get people that don't like Bart. But Bart is, you can't say he doesn't know the Bible. He's been studying it for 50 years.
Right.
And he was a Christian for like 20 years.
I haven't watched a lot of his stuff. I've just I know the name enough to.
Oh, Bart is an assassin. Another dude is Alex O'Connor. Another dude he's a more newer guy, and he's a philosopher type dude. But there's problems. We'll get into it here in a little bit. Problems of especially Old Testament stuff that are really, really tough to chew on.
No, I get that. Well, yeah, let's kind of jump in and then do you want to tease what's coming on your show with all this?
Yeah. But right before we get into this, so the Bible religions, philosophy, and the crown jewel, cults. So that a lot of people are really excited about what we're about to do with cults. I have my buddy Brennan Seifert, who's been doing stuff with me for a while, but I think we're finally found in our specific lane. And so our first episode will be on the FLDS, which is nuts. The Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. Some of those guys. Have you watched American? It's on Netflix, I think.
Is it the one about them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Solid.
I'll probably put 100 hours of it. Yes, they are nuts, dude. Warren Jeffs, his dad that started it, Rulon Jeffs, 80 wives apiece, and underage
and they would
girls,
kill your tail.
Yeah, and they'll disappear you. They were kicking out the boys because they were, all the weddings are arranged. So it would just be some like 40 or 50-year-old getting all the girls, and then like this young.
Have you watched Big L? I mean, I know those are fiction, but hey, my father-in-law, you probably don't know this, 22-year FBI man, was the lead special agent on the Tony Alamo stuff.
Really? Yeah, would he want to talk about that?
Oh, he's in a few documentaries that are on Hulu and stuff.
Oh, I'd love to talk to him. That would be perfect.
We can set that up afterwards if you want to. I mean, but so when you talk to him about it, anyway, I know that's not where this is going, but it's
that'd be cool.
We can make that intro because I think that's going to be he'll have some stuff that's right up your alley.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So I've kind of become like a tradition hunter. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is tradition?
Yeah.
What is actually in the Bible? Very eye-opening stuff when you decide to take the rails off and chase this.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of things. So like if you would have asked me who wrote the Gospels, I would have said, look, easy, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. It's super easy. And then, but so what I'm doing today here and what I would like to do is to respectfully and systematically work through a couple things just to show that like I said, not to deconvert people, not to try to steal people's faith, nothing, but to show that there is debates in some of these areas.
I can agree with that, and I'll let everybody know where I'm gonna approach it from, which right. Is I believe Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to heaven.
Right.
I believe that the Bible is the infallible word of God, but which we're going to question some right here, which is okay. God says multiple times, question these things, and so we're allowed to do that. And I believe the Bible can uphold to the scrutiny, and so that's the side I'll come at it from. But I hadn't put the time in it you have. I don't have the answers, but I'm open, as we should be.
Right.
If we're going to discuss our faith, we're really going to live these things and believe these things. We got to be able to talk about it.
Let's do it.
Let's rock and roll. All right, start where you want to, baby.
All right. There's three things I really want to talk about. I think they're going to be tough. They're going to be a little tough. The first thing is I want to talk about the birth narrative. Okay, because I think that it's not near as cut and dry as what we think. I think nativity scenes have kind of convinced us that it's all one big happy thing.
Dude,
it's not.
So I've been listening to some podcasts on this. It's funny that you have that. Yeah. So I'm in on this conversation. First of all, I don't think anyway. Go ahead.
We'll get into it because I'm definitely there. The next thing I want to do is talk about authorship a little bit, because I think people feel like the people that they are originally attributed to him really wrote the Bible for sure, and I want to at least bring the argument of Matthew here today,
right?
To where we'll be able to at least know that it is debated, and like people will make their own conclusions. I will bring the information and bring some points. And the last thing is, and this is going to be super uncomfortable, but I love you, man, so I had to bring it. We're going to talk about slavery in the Old Testament.
No, I like it, dude. Because how could a good God allow that?
So hey, there's loopholes. There's not loopholes. There's questions about morality. There's questions about who changed. Was it us? Was it God? It's
right. And as my understanding is, God doesn't change. So
we'll get there. So we're locked in. We got our info. We're ready to go. So let's hop into the birth story. So the first thing about when you read the birth story, I think if you start with the idea that Matthew and Luke have to line up, I think you might be tempted to do maybe some mental gymnastics to make them 100% line up. My argument is going to be that we should look at each individual author and what they say and try to figure out what each individual author meant.
So while you're doing this, I'm going to be looking up Matthew. I'm going to be reading from the NASB 95, just to kind of.
Okay. Yeah. So I have the so Matthew starts with a genealogy. It's a big long genealogy. You got to get past that before you get to there, and then it'll say the birth story took place like this.
You want to start with the visit of the Magi and who they were, or?
Yeah. Well, we can just. We really don't have to read everything. We need to just get the main points. So the first thing I want to highlight is that if we were to get a piece of paper out, and we were going to write down all the things that Luke lists happens, and all the things that Matthew lists happens, and then you look at them side by side. This is if you haven't looked in this before, this is when you'll have your first aha moment of, oh, well, these definitely are not like they're not just the exact.
They're not the exact same story
being told, right? Yeah. And so you got the Magi over here. You got the shepherds in Luke. You got Herod over here. You have really not much Herod. Luke mentions Herod, but doesn't say that they're being chased or that Herod kills innocents or whatever. We're going to get into a timeline problem.
Yeah.
When we start looking at the timeline, because as the great Pastor Jeff Shreve said on your show, I was listening. King Herod died in 4 BC. Thank you, Jeff Shreve. I appreciate that.
So and there's answers to that as well.
Yeah. So Jeff Shreve, we shout out to him. I really want to sit down with him. That'll be fun.
Dude, it was a strong interview for sure. Yeah,
for sure. So if King Herod dies in 4 BC, there's the Luke chooses to anchor Jesus' birth with King Herod and also a census. And so the census has a lot of problems.
Well, and so part of that is there were 2 censuses in that time.
Can you prove it?
All right. Well, yeah, let's get into it. I like it.
Because I don't think there was. And I don't think, because there's a lot of reasons. So first we have the Magi, then we have the shepherds, then we have Herod, then we have the census. If you look closely, it looks like Matthew doesn't start the story in Nazareth. Matthew is already in Bethlehem. They have them already in Bethlehem. And when they come visit them, they're in a house.
And so that's the whole manger thing.
Does he have 2 houses? Does he have a house in Nazareth, have a house in Bethlehem? Is there anything about Joseph and Mary that would make us think that they have 2 homes? That's completely different than if they start in Nazareth and Luke and then have to go for a census. Now let's think about the census. A worldwide census, really? I don't think so.
Well, so all right, so let's slow down. Let's go to it. And I don't know. I'm not. I'll play apologist, but I'm not educated on it much. So, if you were a carpenter in that day,
a tecton.
Yeah, tecton. So either stones or wood.
Right.
And so, and I appreciate that. You were upper middle to upper class.
Oh, are you sure about that? Where'd you get that from?
Just based on history, you weren't at the bottom. How about that? You weren't the lowest.
Well, if they're from Nazareth, what about unless they're working? We don't have no. That's the thing. Okay, so. Trying to separate tradition from
absolutely.
From how can I know that?
You can't. Okay. Right. So you can't know that. But maybe they did have 2 houses, but it doesn't say. Nowhere does it say that.
Right.
But if that was your traditional in Jewish tradition, if that was this is my understanding. Once again, I don't. Right. If that was where you were from, the city of David, which is Bethlehem. So. You would not be turned away, which brings into question: was it an inn? Was it? And so that's why a lot of scholars think it was a house. And then there were times during that period that the setup of the house was you had an upper level. I don't know, an upper level kind of living area, and then in that same room was a lower level where the animals lived. So you would have had your house and your animals could have ventured up there. So if you were going to be, it definitely hurts the narrative. Oh, he was born in a barn and all this, so much as if it was a manger's a feed trough. Okay, we need an extra bed.
And I don't think he was born in a manger. He was placed in a manger.
Placed in a manger. Yeah,
Mary wasn't just like,
laid up. So, but traditionally, if that's the way the house was set up, 2 levels, kind of the same. If we think of a pole barn today, right? Or a shop, but then you've got your, I know some old boys that have a shop and you got your tractor sitting over there, but also you've got your room right here where you've got your TV set up and maybe a bar set up and all that, and you can walk from one to the other.
Right.
That's kind of my example on this. Is that's the way a lot of that works. So. You know,
I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me at all. I'm saying the census.
So the census. So there were two guys. There were two census, and I golly,
I think you'll have a hard time finding that in any.
Well, in Jewish tradition and in Roman history.
Okay, which one? What Roman history has two censuses?
So if you go back and read, there was a census. There was the main census you're talking about that they moved to Bethlehem for, but there was a regional census.
So why Luke say worldwide?
Well, it depends on which one you're talking about.
So Luke said that they went to Bethlehem for a worldwide census.
So that's
all of Rome.
That's the one that Caesar called for.
Right, according to Luke.
According to Luke. There was 6 AD. And so there's also evidence of a earlier census.
But why would Luke be talking about that?
Because the guy who did the main census, right, in the big one,
Quirinius,
he was
the governor of Syria.
He was the governor of Syria. But before then, what was his job?
Before then, it doesn't matter. They were a client. Judea was a client kingdom.
Yeah,
they were had King
exactly
Herod's son over them. Why would there be a registration from whatchamacallit for a client kingdom? Well, they don't turn to a Roman province until 86 or 6 AD. Let me say that clearly.
Right. So, but before then, Quirinius worked under. He was already counting regions, and so there would have been two censuses that he did both of them.
And that he did that 10 years earlier.
Yeah, but not a worldwide, but in that area.
So why does Luke mention?
Well, I never asked.
Let's look at the Greek hegemon euentos.
Yep.
It means a governor, ruler, in charge. We know that Quirinius was the governor in charge of Syria.
Yeah.
Right? Well, let's look at the verse specifically. It's in Luke 3 or Luke 2. Because I'm going to say,
I like this. By
I'm going to say that I don't think there was a second census, and I don't think it really makes sense. Because if Herod dies in 4 BC, his son Archelaus takes over. Right. Archelaus, Herod's stuff is split into 3. So Antipas is who going to kill John the Baptist later. Goes up to Galilee.
Right.
Archelaus stays in Judea. The other brother, Philip, gets some other stuff off to the east. And so then Josephus says that he rules for 10 years.
Right.
And then he gets the boot. Once he gets the boot, in 6 AD, which is about 10 years, using that there's no year zero.
Right.
Because you go from 1 BC to 1 AD directly.
Because when are we putting Jesus born?
6 AD, 5 to 6 AD, because Herod died in 4 BC and tried to kill him within the first 2 years of his life.
So I just wanted to make sure that people understood, just because we're saying BC and AD, it isn't necessarily BC and AD, because he was born in 6 AD.
Well, no. Well, Jesus is that.
Well, if you're thinking of after death, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't stand for after death.
No.
It's something Domini.
But there was a monk in I think the 600s that got it wrong.
Yeah.
So he's probably 4 to 6 years off.
Right.
Because Jesus wasn't born on year 1.
Exactly. And that's just what I wanted to clarify.
Unless we don't believe Matthew. Like I believe Matthew.
Right.
Or Luke, because Luke mentions King Herod. So it has to be while King Herod is alive. Archaeology, Roman records, all the stuff, we could put King Herod pretty confidently. Shout out to Jeff Shreve, put us there at 4 BC.
Yeah, he did.
And so.
But I just wanted to make sure people understood, because we're saying BC doesn't mean it was all the way before him, and because we're saying AD doesn't mean it was after he was dead.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
That's just
it's wrong. The calendar's not right.
So I wasn't arguing with anything other than Jesus was born 5 or 6 AD-ish.
Right.
And so
I think with Roman, if we put Jesus born at 6 AD or 6 BC, we also get Luke putting him in this census at 6 AD.
Yeah.
From my understanding of it, because Quirinius is government, he was the hegemon, which is the
which
same
is verse
word.
2. There's a census first taken while Quirinius was the governor of Syria.
Yeah. While Quirinius is governor under Syria. This is super important. There's no reason for it to say before he was governor of Syria. There's some Greek words where people try to do that. I have the Greek words here. Luke could have used 3 other different words if he wanted to say before, and yet he says under. Right. First, and he says the first census under Quirinius, while he's governor.
This
of
was the first
Syria.
while he was governor.
Under Syria. No, where's Weil? Is Weil in there?
This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria.
Okay, yeah, was governor under Syria. That's good. That's good for my point.
Yeah.
Because we know from Roman records that he's not the governor of Syria till 6 AD.
Right. And that's what I'm saying.
And so
my point is, he was part of, because nobody just becomes governor, right? You work your way
Why
up.
mention that he's while he's the governor of Syria means while he's the governor
Yeah, this
of
is
Syria.
the one he did while he's the governor of
Yeah,
Syria.
that's the one Luke is talking about.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that.
Okay,
I'm just
then
saying there was another one before. Yeah,
okay.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know that there's a census before, but I don't want to get lost on that. But right now we have Jesus getting put at 6 BC and 6 AD at the same time.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a 10-year gap that's really hard to explain. Archelaus rules during that 10 years. Archelaus is almost as bad as his dad, and
Right.
eventually gets the boot. I'll tell you why how I found this. I didn't know this was an actual, like, I don't want to just, the discrepancy, I guess, that word contradiction is hard, but I'm just, where this is like, dang, that doesn't line up, is I was listening to Eusebius. I had this guy, like, spaz out on me. He was like, you're a false teacher. You're a heretic. You need blah, blah, blah. I know what you need. You need to go read Eusebius, classical history, which Eusebius is an early church father in the mid-300s, and he's supposed to have wrote the first Christian history.
Right.
So I just go,
It's easy.
listen to it. So we get into the first chapter of Eusebius. He's breaking it all down. He first starts with Jesus' birth. He says, we've got we had Herod. Herod tries to kill the kids. They got the census. And I was like, wait, and the census? And he tied the census to a date that I already knew from something else. He was like, and when, because you got to think, when Rome turned it from, they get rid of Archelaus, they turn it from a client kingdom into a Roman province.
Right.
And then they say, okay, now we're bringing in a governor. Now Rome is going to be directly over you. This is the reason for the census. Now that Rome is directly involved with them, because they were letting them be their own thing with Herod and then Herod's son ruling them. Now it's time for them to be directly over them. Now it's time for a census. We need to know what you got, where you work, all that stuff. You know why. They want to tax you.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want to tax you. And so,
but I just want, and this is what the name I was trying to remember. So the commentary on this says that Caesar Augustus was the one who ordered the worldwide census. So
but do you think, but there's no Roman record of even him ordering a worldwide census. There's a record of a census happening in 6 AD for Judea.
Right. No, I'm with you. I just want to say that, that's who was that's the big man.
Right. But it's under Quirinius. Quirinius was the one in charge
Quirinius
of
is
making
there.
it happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so, now, do I think that they had to travel to Bethlehem? Absolutely not. I don't think that. That's just me looking at the historical side of it. Why would this family travel 80 miles, let's 70 to 80 miles, with her being 8 months pregnant to get counted in a town you don't live in? Because according to Luke, they live in Nazareth.
Yeah,
so you're going to go
Jesus of Nazareth is what it was known as.
Right. So why travel 80 miles with your pregnant wife to go get counted and get your stuff counted? How can they tax him in Bethlehem for what he owns in Nazareth? Well, then you have to say something that isn't in the Bible.
Right.
Then you have to say, well, maybe he had 2 homes. Cool, maybe he could. What I'm here to do is not necessarily possibility. We can never mark out any possibility for hardly anything, right? Possibilities are endless.
Right.
What we're looking for is the probability. Did Jesus have 2 homes? I don't think so. Why would? And here's another thing: the whole idea of them traveling for a census, almost if it's a worldwide census, assuming it's talking about all Rome. I don't really think it was for all Rome. I don't think that there's nothing in history that shows us all Rome.
Right.
I think there's one for Judea. And then, but if everybody traveled to, you got to think, David is 1,000 years before Joseph.
Right.
So if everyone traveled to their ancestral home, what would that do to the world? And we also know that there was this guy, because I got off track. When I'm reading Eusebius, back to that. When I'm reading Eusebius, he lays it out. There's a guy that they mentioned, Judas the Galilean. Judas the Galilean is the first guy, well, not the first, but one of the first to start a legit revolt against Rome.
Right.
You want to guess the year he does this?
I'm going to guess it's about 680.
It's about 680. Because when they do the census, it pisses him off. He says he starts what would later grow into the Zealots, and would later grow into the Sicarii, which are super important.
Which, side note, is the run up to 70 AD when they because the Romans finally get so tired of the Jewish people, they're like, you know what? we're just gonna take you out.
And those are like an offshoot of them. This is the stirring that happens over the years, because we're talking about 86, and the Jewish-Roman War don't take place till 66.
Yeah.
You're talking about 60 years of it brewing, but more than that.
Yeah.
More than that. So, even just Herod taking that from Pompey and from the Hasmoneans and then becoming the dude, and then Herod rules for 40 years, and his son rules for 10 years, and then they are...
And Herod was, by all historical context, a horrible person.
Well, he was a Game of Thrones character.
If
you really studied Herod,
that's
he's
exactly
like a Game of Thrones character, dude. He killed his kids. His wife upset him eventually.
Yeah.
So he gets called to Rome. It's an interesting story. Not to get lost, I need to stay where I'm at. But he gets called to Rome to answer for something that happened to him, and in Rome, they like his wife, Salome.
Right.
I think it's Salome. It might be the other one. It's the other one. No, because he had more than one. They like one of his wives. And so what he did was, when he left, he was like, he has orders. If he don't come back, kill the wife, right? So while he's gone, it turns out that doesn't have to happen. But when he comes home, his advisor that he gave the order to tells the wife. And she's like, hey, I'm just letting you know that, like, if things go south, they have to get rid of you. She gets mad, and that starts their first downfall between them. And eventually, Herod the Great has to send her that way. And so he also kills his son that was supposed to inherit everything, Antipater, right before it's supposed to happen.
And so I just want to point out for everybody too, Herod is working under, he's the king, but he also works under the governor so we've got two.
Well, there's not a governor, not a governor.
Well, he works under Caesar,
right?
And so, but we've got two competing,
right? Because that's why it's so important in Jesus's life. If you think that Jesus was born during Herod's time, then Jesus lived through two different systems, in Judea. Because at the beginning, which Jesus, I'll say this. I don't think, like I said, I don't think the census is. I think Luke tried to tie it to something in history
that wasn't. You're holding that didn't. It doesn't tie.
And I think if we take that he was born to inherit, Jesus lived under two systems, a client kingdom, and then when the census did happen in Judea, then it went to them being a Roman province, which is living under two different things, which is how we get Quirinius, which is how we get the next governor, and which is how we get Pontius Pilate being the one in charge and there during Passover. So,
which would be Roman 30 years later,
right? It's like, because if I said what year Jesus born, it's like, oh, it's kind of tough. Do we take Luke or we take this? There's different math inside of Luke that's very interesting. So it says, Luke says that the whole stuff with John the Baptist at the beginning starts at the 15th year of Tiberius, right? And I know what that is, right? That's AD 29, right? And then he says he's about 30, which places Jesus somewhere. Luke says about 30, which places him somewhere
29 to 31.
Yeah, 1 BC or 180-ish, which is different than 4 BC and different than 6 BC.
Right.
If he wanted it to jive with the census, he'd have to say he was about 22.
Well, so let me approach it from this side. And I've said this to you before, I think. My understanding, and I'm no law officer or anything, but if you get, but if me and you are hanging out and two other old boys and some guy comes through and just starts spouting off some crazy stuff, and like, oh, and then we're all then we all have a same friend.
Yeah.
And then maybe we're having cold pop out by the fire one night and we're talking about it or something. And you're like, hey, man, dude came up wild, started telling us some crazy stuff. And then we're like, yeah, that happened. They're like, oh, yeah. But then somebody's going to be like, yeah. But did you notice he had on one flip-flop, one boot? And one guy be like, no, I didn't see that. And then somebody else will be like, yeah, that's true. But then, so all the stories are going to, same principle, they're going to be they're going to vary some. Right. So I just want, because that's the way it works, right?
I'm fine with that, because my deal is that I really feel there's a real human element to their writing, more human than what I think you would agree with me, and that's fine. But so yeah, that absolutely.
Yeah,
that works out more with what I'm saying. I'm saying these guys are.
I can acknowledge
trying their best. I think because that is my thought, and it's not a popular one with Christians at least, is that I think these dudes were just trying their best, and so
they're trying to tell their story about.
Luke wants to be a historian. Let's read Luke 1 because this is very interesting. Like Luke I said,
1,
I don't think Luke 1 because he's going to explain why he's doing what he's doing.
Let me, just for those listening, I know I hold. Do you hold? Because we jumped right in. The birth narrative, and I agree. I agree. I believe he was born in Bethlehem. I know he later lived in Nazareth.
I would finish my thought.
But do we both agree that Jesus was a real person who was born?
I think he was a real person who was born. I don't necessarily think he was born in Bethlehem.
Okay.
Here's what I think. I
just felt like that was important to the conversation.
I'm not they call that. There's a Jesus mythicist. I'm not that. Because Josephus writes about Jesus, Tacitus writes about Jesus.
Right. I mean,
there's outside sources. There are later, though. They are later. They're like, like Josephus is writing 50 to 70 years later, and Tacitus is actually writing even later than that.
Well, I know a guy who just wrote a book about John F. Kennedy.
Right, for sure. But but also he has the internet. So
but what I'm saying, but still, you know what I mean.
A library.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not denying Jesus is a real person. That's not what I'm doing.
Well, and I don't think you are, but I just wanted to, because the historical accuracy that Jesus lived, not as God, like that's up for debate.
That's a whole different debate. Yeah.
But that the person Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah,
because by the way, his last name wasn't Christ.
Yeah,
it was, Joseph's boy would have been accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
I mean, they called him son of a carpenter forever.
Yeah, right. He's more historically documented than Julius Caesar himself.
In a way, yeah. If you and some of it, that I hate to use the word circular, but some of it, the documentation is just the Bible. So like if we
based off itself,
yeah. So like we'll talk about authorship here in a little bit. We won't hang on this too much longer, but like Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're called the Synoptic Gospels, and you'll realize that if Matthew and Luke draw from Mark as a source, and I can prove that, or not prove that, but I can probability that.
Yeah.
Then. If there's something said, it's called a triple tradition. There's something that's in all three of them. Then those aren't three separate tradition. I mean, those aren't three separate deals. You know what I'm saying? That's one deal copied twice, right? So there's
or witnessed by three.
Yeah, we'll get into that because we'll get there.
But I see what you're saying, right?
But, okay, so let's finish the deal. So I'll give you what I think. I think that Jesus was actually born in Nazareth, right? And that's why he was Jesus of Nazareth.
Okay.
And I think when the evangelists, so Luke and Matthew, when it's time to write the story, I think let's get dates out there. Me personally, I think Matthew was written somewhere around 75 to 80 AD.
Right.
And that's generally the consensus in scholarship. I think Luke is actually 80 to 85, a little bit afterwards. There's 27 books in the New Testament. There's 2 that mention the virgin birth. And the other 25 make zero mention. Nothing from Paul, nothing outside of the Gospels mention the virgin birth. We get that in 2 of the 27 deals. Luke and Matthew are both looking at Mark as a source. That's called Markan priority. Most people believe that. 90% of Mark is in Matthew. 60% of Mark is in Luke.
Right.
It's hard to get around some of these things.
No, that's
and
right.
So what I'm saying is that Jesus was probably born in Nazareth according to history, what I think, and that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. That's perfectly fine. And I think that they needed a way to tie him back to the Old Testament. And I think you're going to find that a lot with the prophecies, is that prophecies sound cool. You're like, dang, look at all these prophecies that point to Jesus.
Right.
It's like, but it's a dude that knows the Old Testament that's saying, he's searching the Old Testament.
Well, so here's my pushback on it. Jesus was supposed to be from the line of David.
Right.
Joseph. So then one of David's sons is cut off, right, in the Old Testament.
Right.
And that I can't remember his name. But he
Absalom?
Maybe, yeah. But he wasn't allowed to be king. So, but Joseph is from that line.
Right.
So,
but Joseph's not even his dad.
I know. But we're
That's
just going.
Strange to me that Matthew starts a genealogy and it's like,
for God, it's not his dad.
It's not his dad.
Yeah. But if we're going with Joseph raised him, so he would be in, because you could go. Mary also ties back to David and her genealogy as well.
Right. But to be clear, I don't think Luke's genealogy is of Mary, neither. I think they're both of Joseph, and I think that they're different, but that's just a different thing.
Oh, okay. So then if you go back to you had to be in the city of your family, well, if Joseph is of the line of David, which he would have been, then he has to be tied back to Bethlehem. And so...
But why? Why get taxed in a town you're not from? I don't understand that.
Well, I don't know. What do you say when people ask where you're from?
I say Texarkana.
Right. I mean, but when I lived in Fort Worth, it was okay. Side note: when I lived in Fort Worth, and it came time to vote, my driver's license was still tied here.
No.
What I have to do? I had to have an absentee.
I had driver's license in districts.
I understand, but I had to have an absentee ballot.
Right.
From here to be able, I couldn't just vote out there.
Right.
So I didn't have to physically be here, but technically, I had to be here to do whatever I needed to do from my hometown.
Right.
So it's not that far-fetched in today's world to think.
I would agree in today's world.
Well, I mean, we're all based on
traveling 80 miles.
80 miles a long way on a donkey.
Like, that's nuts.
Like, bro. I can, because a horse is going to average 3 miles an hour. With
they had a horse. Yeah.
Well, she had a donkey if we're going with the biblical narrative.
No, it's not in the Bible.
Oh, is it not?
No,
okay.
No, the donkey thing's not in the Bible. That's actually in the proto-gospel of James. It didn't make it in the Bible.
There we go. Okay, so
that's a tradition.
Okay, so that's a tradition, like we're talking about. So maybe she didn't. But
I'm just saying the Bible didn't say.
But a person walks 2.5 to 3 miles an hour. So you're at what? If you walk nonstop,
8 months pregnant.
8 months pregnant for 10 hours, you make 30 miles. So then you've got to do that basically 3 days in a row. You got to cover 3 days. So there's a lot. But also, I'm not holding that they did it all, even with the Magi and the
Magi are not in Luke.
Right, but
that'd be shepherds.
I think the Magi tie in, and we can get to that here in a little bit. But what I'm saying is, I don't know how long they took. How long did they take to get there?
Doesn't say.
Right. So maybe they left 3 months early.
I mean, how would they know?
Right. And we don't know. Right. But if you're going to travel 80 miles by foot, you're not leaving the day before.
Yeah. All we get is Luke that says they have to travel to a census, and I just wonder about the census.
And so if they know that's coming, I would assume, and a lot of assumptions being made here, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But the probability is, if you know you're having to walk that far, you're not waiting till wait up time to go. So maybe when they left, she's 2 months pregnant.
Maybe so. There's no way. But
there's no way to prove any of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I don't tie it all to her going and doing it all when she's 8 months pregnant. So much as, from a realistic standpoint, if I knew I was about to have to walk out to your house right now, I'd be like, Joe, I'll see you tomorrow, buddy. I'm out of shape. I'll get there, and then I'd show up on the back of somebody's pickup tailgate like, hey, I got a ride, baby. Wagon came by, whatever. So that's kind of how I see it as, is I don't know how long it took them, but I don't think it all happened in the 8th month. When she got there.
She had the baby. Seems to be pretty fast.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's fine. No, that's good. We got to talk about this stuff. I think the last thing on the census is, I think that they wanted to attribute it to Bethlehem. They needed to tie it to the old deal. I think,
because Bethlehem's going to want their money too, baby. Just like this, your state, well, we don't have state income tax here, but Arkansas, if you're from there, you're paying the tax.
Yeah, but here's another thing to think about is that the Roman province was only Bethlehem.
Right.
Galilee would have still been a deal. So, anyways, it's hard to tell. We can't solve it. But I'm just saying, like I said, I'm here to say. I
like the question.
Here's the think about. Here's the last thing I want to say on that. Then we really need to move to the other deal.
Okay.
So there's one big thing that takes a big jump to think about the birth story too. When it is time to leave, right? Uh-huh. When it's time to leave, in Luke, they say they have the baby in Bethlehem. 8 days, he gets circumcised. Then, somewhere in the next 40 days, they go to the temple and do the stuff to make him a real Jew. And then...
A real boy.
And then, you know what they do? It says they return immediately to Nazareth. And it's like, okay, dope.
Right.
So, that's Luke's story. Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Circumcision. Purification at the temple. Nazareth. Easy peasy. no trouble, no crazy stuff, no being hunted by kings, no none of this stuff in a sequence that goes bam, bam.
It doesn't say, hey,
bam.
they went to Egypt. And
Yes, and so in Matthew we have Herod tries to get him, so he has an angel comes to him in a dream, leave. So which is sad because the angel only comes to Mary and Joseph when it could have came to the whole community and said, hey, there's a guy coming to kill all the babies.
Right. Which you could tie this into your slavery argument here in a little bit.
Oh, for sure. So it's like, okay, how about we tell all the babies to get out?
Right.
But we don't. But anyway, that's a side note. They tell just them, so Jesus escapes. They escape to Egypt. After that, they have another dream. It's time to go. Because Herod does come in. And there's nothing in history outside of the Bible that says the massacre of the innocents happened.
Right.
So we can probability it. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. The Bible says it did, so we'll say it did.
I mean, historically,
Herod was paranoid.
right. And
But
Bible, pretty accurate.
In parts.
Yeah.
In parts. I'm going to show you a part where it ain't.
Okay.
Well, I mean, just it's hard for this to make sense of this. It says they go to Egypt. They stay there for a while. Then when they decide they want to come back to Judea, which makes me think that they started there in the first place. Like Nazareth is not mentioned at this point.
Well, they did.
start in
They did
Bethlehem.
before he was born.
Where?
They started.
According to Luke.
It started, but then they went to Bethlehem. So
But I'm talking about Matthew.
okay, all
I'm
right.
talking about separately. In Matthew, they start in Bethlehem, and they don't travel to Bethlehem in Matthew.
Right.
And then when they go to Egypt, they want to go. Egypt is south. When they want to go back up,
Yeah.
they want to go live in Judea.
Right.
But they realize
They have
from
to
a
leave
dream
the-
they don't want to go to Archelaus, who
Yeah.
is just as bad as his dad almost.
Right.
And so what do? They go to Nazareth. Nazareth almost feels like the second option, not their original home. It feels like their second option. And why doesn't Luke say anything about it? And there's different ways to dance around. That's why we're not looking for possibility.
Yeah.
We're looking for probability. We're saying Luke is known as the best New Testament writer. That's why earlier when we're looking at Greek words, when he said prote, I didn't say the word, but when he said first,
Right.
I think he meant first because that's the type of dude Luke is, right? From
Right.
everywhere else. And when he says that they went from here to here, so here's my question. If I didn't know Matthew and I read Luke, why would I think any of that other stuff happened? It's only because I know Matthew, and it's only because I think Matthew and Luke should actually have to line up. It's something
Right.
that preconceived notion that these are the same two stories. There's just different parts and different deals. You have to approach it like that. And to me, that's not necessarily just context. That is, I mean, that starts to feel like when we say, oh, well, Luke knew about that. He just chose not to write about
Right.
it, and then he compressed time or whatever. It's just
Right.
like, but Luke said this. So what's happening to me feels like is once we start trying so hard to make those two things harmonize, is that we end up adding things into the Bible,
Which you don't
I
wanna
would
do.
say is a no.
Yeah.
I would say the last thing I want to do because
God says, don't add to or take away from my word.
look at all these notes. This is all the stuff I just notes and notes and notes and notes on this stuff. I respect the Bible enough still.
Yeah.
Brother, I don't want no part of that. I don't want to be adding stuff. Now, so like if we're adding, I think there does come a point where we're trying to salvage the stories and make them that instead of reading what Matthew has a reason. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. Matthew has a reason for why he wrote Matthew this way and told the birth narrative that way. And Luke has a reason for why he wrote it that way. If we mash them together, you don't have those two individual reasons now. We have a pretty nativity story in your front yard.
Yeah.
I think that's different.
And so my point on that is I kind of agree with you on that so much as I don't think they have to. I don't believe any. Like I said, I'm not a cop. Never have been. I talked some,
Yeah.
but I don't think in any eyewitness testimony I would. It'd be like
It's time to talk about that.
if it's all going to line up perfectly.
Yeah.
But I prefer that it doesn't because if not, it's like, all right, boys, here's where we're going. We didn't rob that. We didn't rob that bank. We were out here.
But I mean, if you look at how closely, and if Mark is the source, it seems like that. So this is the time to get into it. If you'll allow me to do that, I will present the Matthew argument.
Because oh yeah,
Because
go
we're
ahead.
there now. Because okay, so you're appealing to eyewitness. That's cool. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to eyewitness. Are we doing good time if I ramble too much?
No, we're good. Let's go to the bottom of the hour.
Okay, the bottom of the hour.
Yeah, I don't know why I said it that way. It's 9:30.
No, okay. Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, write that in my notes. Okay.
Clock it, baby.
Yeah. So authorship is important. So I'll start with some questions, and we'll try to be brief. We got to move through because there's a lot of points I want to get here. But let me ask you a question. What about Matthew makes you think Matthew wrote Matthew?
You know what? I've never studied it enough outside of just saying, oh, Matthew's first book of the New Testament. Let's go with the assumption that the guys that you know what I mean?
Right. Okay. So that's fine. And I think that is a good answer. You didn't just try to say a bunch of stuff just to feel like
you've met me.
So I want you to read the top of this. It says the gospel according to Matthew. I'm going to say
the record of genealogy of Jesus.
Yeah. So that's the genealogy. We'll get into that later. But what I'm saying is that it says the gospel. I'm talking about the title above that.
Oh, mine doesn't say that.
It doesn't say that? Well, that's good because it probably wasn't there.
Right.
The gospel according to Matthew is it being later attributed. Yeah, check that out. Pop open Matthew and see if it says the gospel according to Matthew.
You want to know a crazy story about this Bible?
Sure.
So somebody at church called me, and I was going through a divorce and depressed, and they're like, "Hey, we have your Bible here," and I'm like, "Oh, you don't have my Bible?" Uh-huh. And they're like, "No, we do. My Bible's in the my main one that just notes. It looks like that on the inside of it." And they're like, "No." And I opened it, and I'm going through it, and then this says God. And they were like, "We got it for you." And I get maybe up with this person that says, "God always wins. Keep Jesus closer. Please use patience, and no better days are coming." Zach Ratliff. And it was just a Bible sitting. So, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story.
Okay, so hold on. Let me go to Matthew, not Ezekiel, not Jeremiah. I'm too far.
There is a list of stuff somewhere I need to look at for making that, but it's going to say.
For those of you listening, we're turning pages in our notes. So this one says the gospel according to Saint Matthew.
Yeah. So that obviously. So my whole point is that Matthew wouldn't have said that, right? Matthew didn't write that down.
Okay.
And my next deal is I don't think Matthew wrote Matthew. This is just my opinion.
Yeah.
And in fact. So here's the thing. If we're thinking about what is tradition and what's true, or not true, but what is tradition and what's actually from the Bible, I can say this with confidence. Matthew writing Matthew is a tradition.
Fair.
There's no way in Matthew. There's no place in Matthew that says I Matthew.
Because if Paul, it's like from Paul, or
I am Paul, right?
Or it's like so and so on behalf of.
Yes.
Yeah. So I see what you're saying. That.
In fact, Matthew just starts with the genealogy and takes off with the genealogy.
Or just rock and roll.
And then when it gets time for Jesus' birth, like I said earlier, it says, and this is kind of how it says. Like I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, and this is how the birth of Jesus took place.
Right.
And he just starts telling the story.
Yeah.
Right. And so we got to think about that. So we know that it's an anonymous book. It's never attributed to anybody. There's really nothing in Matthew that would make us think Matthew. In fact, there's one small thing that sometimes people think this might be what the whole case is built on.
Okay.
At the beginning, at least, is that Matthew is called Levi in Luke and Mark, and he's called Matthew in this one.
Right.
There it is. There's the proof.
Okay.
That's not that great a proof. So. Right.
and I'm just gonna be honest. I don't know enough about it to be able to argue it any other way.
Yeah.
Other than faith and tradition of what I've been taught. So I can.
Right.
And let me say this for those listening. This doesn't attack my faith principle.
Right.
So I'm right.
Yeah.
I mean.
So I am going. So yeah, that's perfect. I think this is a tradition, and I'll start to explain when we get there. He like I said, never says I Matthew, never really gives us any reason there's Matthew, never really writes anything in a way where you say like, oh, this dude was in a room. Like not necessarily, right? Because he still writes the exact same way about the secret meeting with Herod as he does for something that Matthew may have been present for.
Right. Okay.
Right. So there's a secret meeting with Herod with the wise men not the wise men, but when the wise men leave.
Yes.
There's a secret meeting that happens. How could Matthew be there? He couldn't be there for that. So Matthew either cooked that up or found someone.
Or it's inspired by the Holy Spirit or,
Okay, yeah. And I'm fine with that. I don't ever go after that one. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe. That's a faith argument and not a historical argument.
Yeah, right. But you're just saying the argument's there.
Right, yeah. So there's really nothing that nothing that screams eyewitness. We look at Mark. There's 90% of Mark in Matthew. That does not scream Matthew was in the room. In fact, that does the opposite, I think. So there's a story I like to tell, an analogy that I've really been thinking on lately. It's that if I'm a journalist, right, and I go to the bank, and I go into the bank, and I'm going to go make a deposit.
Right.
While I'm there, this dude kicks the door open. Everybody on the ground. Boop, 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 boop. Shoots some into the air.
Office
starts,
pop.
Yep. Starts everybody. Yeah, desk pop. The other guys.
Yeah.
Separates all the people. He goes up to the front. He's got a mask on. He gets the lady. She gives him money. She takes him to the safe. He gets the money out of the safe. He yells at everybody. He shoots one more time before he leaves, and he gets away. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the story.
Right.
According to me that's in the room, right? But when it's time for me to write the story, let's say journalist Joe goes, and instead of just saying, hey, here's what I saw, I was here, I go take 90% of somebody else.
And you're like, my buddy Ronnie was there.
Yeah, Ronnie was outside. The journalist Ronnie was outside.
Yeah.
And he didn't see any of the events. All he could do was interview people. And
Right.
I'm going to go take 90%, and it's not word for word, but there is sometimes word for word.
Right.
Sometimes it's sentence for sentence. Sometimes Matthew copies the exact Greek as Mark.
Right.
These aren't. I don't think these are separate accounts. These are Matthew had Mark as a source. If I'm in the room in some of these instances, why use Mark? It doesn't make sense. So like back in the day, they didn't do textual criticism. They didn't put them side by side. They didn't look at the Greek. They didn't have the manuscripts from 300 to like mid 300s to go look at, and then the manuscripts from the medieval times and the manuscripts that, all throughout, and all the different translations of the Bible and all the different ways you can break all this stuff down.
Right.
And
They were just writing.
Right. So the scholarly consensus now is that Mark was written first around AD 70.
Okay.
And Matthew was written somewhere from 75 to 80.
And then Luke,
second.
and then John was
Luke,
written.
and then John is written way later, more than likely.
Like 40 years later, some 30 or 40 years.
Well, by the 90s or 100s is typically the deal. So already, Matthew has done nothing to make me think he's an eyewitness. He's actually took somebody that if you take the church tradition, Mark got his story from Peter afterwards. Mark didn't walk with Jesus. Mark is not
What
eyewitness.
church tradition? Like traditional church tradition?
Well, we'll get to there. It's Papias.
Okay.
Papias
Okay.
is the first guy.
Okay.
We'll talk about Papias is riddled with issues, but we'll get there.
Hence papal, hence the Pope, hence.
Well, I think that's actually different because Papias is he has a lot of ideas. The problem is that someone like Eusebius that I mentioned earlier will use Papias when they need him, but
And
then
then
also
discount him later.
and then also say that he's not smart. He basically said he was slow of mind, and so we have to factor all that stuff in.
Yeah.
But so. We've got no reason to really think Matthew's writing Matthew up until this point. In fact, he's already took somebody that is apparently an eyewitness of an eyewitness, never met Jesus. Mark, there's no evidence to make us feel like Mark, because he is a later companion with Peter.
Right.
And so if he got it from Peter, you can say, oh, well, it's trustworthy. It came from Peter, right?
Right.
But it says, Papias, because we don't really have no way to prove that Mark wrote Mark either, or Luke wrote Luke, or John wrote John. It's a problem that compounds. So we'll get to Papias, right? So it takes, if Matthews wrote in the 80s, I'll even be generous. I'll say even if it's wrote in like 75 to 80, we'll go back a little bit.
But if that's the case, and Jesus dies
33 or 30.
Well,
You can't tell. It's almost impossible to tell.
But if he was born, because if he was, depending on when we're putting he was born. So,
But do you think he was 33 when he died?
I think he was in his 30s.
Right, yeah. What I'm saying is there's no way to know.
Yeah,
There's
no,
no
I
way
don't
to
know. Yeah,
exactly
no,
because there's two full moons on Passover,
Right.
one in 30 and one in 33. So we don't know.
So somewhere in, absolutely.
If you get in Luke's math, like the 15th year of Tiberius being about 30. And then when we look
I don't
at
think
Pontius
anybody can say he was definitely.
No, you can't, because Pontius
I mean,
Pilate.
you can say it.
You just would be talking out your ass.
yeah, that's right.
Pontius Pilate's like 26 to 36. So it's like what we're doing is creating this window.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you there. So, golly, I forgot my point. Oh, but it was. If these are written later, it still, in my mind, doesn't mean it wasn't an eyewitness account so much as when you sit back and you relax. It's kind of like somebody writing an autobiography now. Like, all right, here's what I've seen.
Right.
Or a biography about somebody. Just because time passed doesn't mean it's inaccurate.
But how would you answer, why would he take so much of Mark if he was in the room?
Oh, right. No, I haven't answered that. I'm just saying, if you're writing it later, it doesn't discount you're writing what you've seen. You just wrote it later. I think that they were really expecting the world to end. Jesus was a really apocalyptic type preacher, and I think that especially if you read some of the words in here, I will come again before any of you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so they thought they were.
Like, hey, babe, we're out of here.
And so when it didn't come, I think that by the time we even get to Luke or to John, I think the theology has even changed a little bit.
Because John's looking like, okay, this is forward looking. He wasn't talking about exactly right.
There's a lot higher Christology, meaning that he has a higher view of like divinity of Jesus.
Yes.
It's hard to tell. Like if you read Mark by itself, like you don't walk away from it being like, this is the divine super being. I mean, you get the transfiguration and... But, I mean, he's telling everybody, don't tell nobody. He's being real secretive every time he heals somebody. And
even Jesus, he says to him, he's like, when they're in the boat in the sea, right? And they've seen Jesus do all these miracles. And yet he's like, do you have no faith? Like what? They don't believe in him. I mean, they're watching what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they believe, you know what I'm saying? They're like,
right.
they're questioning things, which, by the way, it tells me it's okay to have this conversation. It's okay to question things because, Peter himself questioned, denied him 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'll build my rock. You need the rock.
Before the rooster crowed once or twice. Because it's different. But anyways, I don't want to get lost on that. But anyways, Matthew, so back to Papias. So we have it wrote in the 80s, possibly late 70s. You would think that, all right, who's the next person to say that, to say, oh, well, Matthew did this, and to mention the Gospels. First of all, we get nothing of Luke and John all the way till 180 AD, which is 100 years later. It's surprisingly quiet there about, there's not like this easy line of transmission. This was Matthew, this was Matthew, this was Matthew. The first time we get Matthew is in the 130s, so about 50 years later, a guy named Papias. Got to talk about Papias, it's a lot of fun. All right,
yeah, go ahead.
So Papias says, the exact quote, I have it written down somewhere, but it doesn't. The Logia, so I have it memorized. He says, Matthew wrote down the Logia in the Hebrew dialect, and everyone interpreted it the best they could. That's a paraphrase of what he said.
So Logia, what's the base on that?
Logia is sayings.
Okay.
So here's what we have, and we have to compare,
because logos is word, right?
Right. So what we have
am I right on that?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we have is, over here in this Bible, a Greek narrative. You see my little pocket rocket?
Yeah.
What we have is a Greek narrative written originally in Greek. Most people say there is scholars that I don't want to be that try to say it was possibly written in Hebrew first, but that is the minority. And if you're comfortable with that, you're comfortable with that. You're not. That's something separate. But
I mean we're going with it was Greek, right?
Yeah, Koine Greek. It was written in Koine Greek.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's 80 years later when Jerusalem was already destroyed, or 50 years later
when the temple was
already destroyed. Yeah. Matthew could be Jewish. People tend to think he's Jewish because he ties the Old Testament so much.
Right.
But like maybe not. And he's writing in Greek, and he's writing in really good Greek. So that's something we have to tackle here.
Which I know we're compacting a lot in here, but I do want to say this. So. Part of him writing really good Greek and all of this is I'm going to go right into where you want. So, out of divine providence.
Okay, I thought you were going a different route. I thought you was going the tax collector route. No, I'd love to eat that one up.
No, I don't know that it says.
Matthew's a tax collector.
Yeah,
for sure. But people don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
People don't know that a tax collector is not. He wasn't.
I was going to say is I don't know that it ties being a tax collector to speaking Greek. Like
exactly. I'm fighting people on the internet about it. But
no. I know it says he's a tax collector. I don't know that it says he had to speak Greek to be a tax collector. I mean, I don't know that that's... I
highly doubt it. And I don't even think he had to be literate to be a tax collector. He had to do numbers.
Yeah, you don't have to be able to read the count.
Because a tax collector, I want to say this, though. I want to cut you off, but I do want to get this out, is the tax collector then, people think that maybe Matthew was answering directly to the Romans, and I don't think that was the case. It's
maybe to the temple.
Yeah. I don't even think the temple was involved in tax collecting, because that's separate. I think that from history side of it is a wealthy Jewish person would go buy a tax contract from the Romans. So the Romans didn't have to do any collecting at all.
And so then that person would collect.
The person would go, and they wouldn't necessarily collect. Then they would go hire regular Jewish people.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they would get a contracting crew, just like to go build a house. You say, well, I want my house built.
You boys go give me some money.
You boys go gather up the money. So I think that
That's very interesting.
Matthew very easily could be low man on a totem pole. They find him in the tax booth. If you own the restaurant, maybe you care about the restaurant and you're there, but most of the time you walk in a restaurant, you don't see the owner. Right.
You see the manager.
No, I'm at the booth, brother. Right now, Matthew could very easily be a Jewish guy that just has to go, that's just going around. And
that's his job.
And that's why people were so upset that Jesus was hanging out with the tax collectors, because it was their own people. It was because the middlemen made money.
I think that fits.
They made money off the Jewish people making money off the other Jewish people in that time.
Which, if we go to the temple story, and I know we're rabbit holing a lot because it's easy to do on such stuff. If we go to the temple story when Jesus walks in, my favorite, you hear people say, "Oh, what version of Jesus is you?" And I usually have two answers. One, there's only one version of Jesus. You just have to read all of it. But two, if I'm going to talk about the story I like most about it, is the dude gets so mad.
Oh, he does get upset.
That he sits down, he weaves together a whip.
Yeah.
And then if you read it, it's like he drives the animals out. What's it called when you drive animals? It's a stampede. He causes a stampede in the temple. Yeah. He flips. He's like, "Not in here, baby!" Like
the temple's so big, it would have been the temple's humongous.
Right, and that's what people. It wasn't just a little room like we're in. Like, it's a big. Anyway, but where I was going to say earlier is with the Greek, through divine providence, with everything leading to Jesus, you had to have Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great has to take over the world. Okay? And then once you do that, then you have the fall of Greece, then you have the rise of Rome. Yeah. Okay? And so then Alexander the Great has trade routes, which go all the way to Asia. Well, then you have the Romans come in and put roads in. Right. Well, then, but we're still speaking Greek. And so when we have that, well, then it's like English today. You can go anywhere in the world and you can find somebody that speaks English.
Right.
Well, so then you have the roads, and then you have a common language. And so then that's making it easier. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
That's definitely how it spread, for sure.
Yeah, and so when we
just argue about what it is.
Yeah, no. But so when we have someone writing in perfect Greek, good. That just means.
Yeah. Well, it's not perfect. It's just educated.
Yeah. Okay, I'm good with that. All right.
But he copies Mark, so I'm thinking like divine providence. Why do we copy Mark and change things? Because like when you get into why they're called the synoptic gospels, it sounds cool. At first you're like, oh, because they're so close, and then you realize that there's something called the synoptic problem, and the synoptic problem is trying to figure out why they're so close and so different.
Right. And once again, I'm not educated enough on, which is why I look forward to.
Oh, yeah, we could do that. I could talk for like 6 hours on this. But anyway, I want to get back to Papias before I get lost on that.
Let's go.
But Papias says in 130, this is the first mention, he says the logia. So he's saying a sayings gospel in Hebrew.
Yep.
That does not sound like what we have. We have a Greek narrative. So Papias, first person to mention Matthew, he says a sayings gospel in Hebrew.
Okay.
Now we have an elaborate 28 chapter narrative written in educated Greek. I don't think we're talking about the same thing. Here's the nail in the coffin why I think Papias doesn't know the Matthew that we're talking about. He doesn't know how Judas dies, and it's in Matthew. So in Matthew, Matthew says that Judas hangs himself.
Right.
That's plain and dry, which it doesn't really line up with Acts. I'll get there in a minute. Okay. But first of all, he says he hangs himself. We'll take that at face value, right? We have Papias, the guy that has tied those two together. We have another great quote from Papias. And the thing about Papias is that we don't have any of his actual writings.
Right.
All we have is his quotes from the Eusebius guy earlier.
Right.
So that's just something.
Well, it's kind of like, who was first, Plato or Aristotle?
Plato, I believe.
It was kind of like quoting Plato. We're not real sure that he existed.
Yeah,
so much as, it's kind of like your grandpa. Like, I knew this old guy, and this is what he said.
Right. So, but this is the first mention of it, right? And he also mentions Mark. This is actually where they get the tradition where Mark was with Peter, because it's something that Papias says.
Right.
So we kind of have to be at least take him a little serious and try to figure it out.
For sure.
But he doesn't know how Judas dies. He says that Judas swells up while he's still alive. Swells up so big he gets sick. It says his stomach.
I've seen this argument had before.
And it said his genitals swelled up and worms came out. It was all crazy. And he basically gets ran over by a chariot and explodes.
Which, if you had hung yourself, and so this is the argument that's made.
But no, what you're saying is the Acts one, which people are saying he swelled up and burst while he was hung, and the rope broke, and then he fell and busted open. Because Acts says that he fell headlong and burst open.
Yeah. Have you ever seen? Because you grew up in the country, I grew up in the country. So you ever seen like when a horse dies?
And swells up, yeah.
And so
I don't. But see, there's a problem with that story too. There's a problem with
like
that
I say, I don't know. That's just me.
Who bought the field? In Matthew, it says Judas bought the field. In Acts, it says he gave the money back, and the priest bought the field.
Did they throw it down at him? Oh, anyway, I don't remember. I don't remember. Yeah, maybe that's a tradition.
But I'm just saying. So now we have three different stories.
Maybe it's in one of the shows I've seen where he throws it down.
Yeah, so I'm saying no. Papias doesn't. This is the point. Papias doesn't know the Matthew that we know. I don't think he does, because he doesn't even know how Judas dies. He has his own wild story about how Judas dies, and he's our first person. So that I don't think.
But that doesn't mean you don't know him in my mind, because of me and you probably know some of the same people that have died. And we probably have different versions
if he had mention of Matthew, like to mention Matthew, he could just read in that Matthew he has that Judas hung himself.
Right, I got you.
And so he doesn't know the story that's in Matthew, but he's telling us why we should believe Matthew.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, so I don't think Papias is the way to go. So that, I get that from that. And like I said, this is just my opinions. Then we get to the next person to say it. It's all the way, like I said, in 180, Irenaeus.
Right.
And the things to know about Irenaeus is that Irenaeus is a heretic hunter.
Right.
This dude is into it with everybody. He's into it with the Gnostics. He's into it with the Marcionites. He's into it with all the people. Most of his writings are called Irenaeus against blank.
Right.
Irenaeus against blank. He's the first person to come up with the idea that there should only be 4 Gospels. Why only 4, you ask? Mm-hmm. Because there was a lot more than 4.
Yeah, because then you get into...
there was a lot of different... There was the Proto-Gospel of James, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. Yeah. There was the Gospel of Thomas. There
you even get on to one where Jesus is a giant.
Oh,
there's a lot of them.
And what a lot of people don't want to think about is, and I think this is an historical reality, is that there was not just one version of Christianity at the beginning. There is the version that won out. Right. It was there. But there was all these other different versions between Gnosticism, between all the
We
stuff.
know that even from biblical teachings when Paul has to write, like, no, you accept these people.
Yeah. I mean, Paul was originally beefing with Christians. That's what a lot of people don't...
For sure. Paul was going around killing Christians.
Well, no. I'm saying in his writings, in his letters.
Yeah, if you read them...
He very rarely is just like... If he'll say something
Saul
about the world, he'll be like, Saul was killing Christians. But I'm saying, around the Gentiles and stuff, he really doesn't say all that much negative about them.
No,
it's all already
you have to accept these people
in the church. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which we can go down the Paul rabbit hole, but not yet.
Yeah, we don't have time.
But you have to bring me back because this is fun.
Yeah.
But so back to Matthew. I don't think of that. So we get to Irenaeus against everybody, except Irenaeus by this time was trying to establish orthodoxy, trying to bring everybody together.
Right.
It's interesting. He said he wanted there to be 4 Gospels, because there's 4 corners of the earth. We're thinking that my boy may have thought that the earth is flat. I can't help that. That's something that he was just dealing with what he knew at that time.
Right. Which, I want to think by then they were, there are a lot of golly astronomers already.
Oh, for sure. But like 4 corners of the earth, brother? But anyways, that's not a side.
Could have been a literary device.
Once, and just like I was saying earlier, after Irenaeus establishes this, and he's an important guy, and he's fighting off all the heretics, and once he attributes this, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, to these people, we have no mention of that before 180 AD. Right. Then all of a sudden, we have this stable line because this important guy said so. But that's not a stable line from the jump. And it's just like in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, like I was saying earlier. If something is in Mark and Matthew and Luke wrote it down, that's not 3 separate writings of it. Right. That's one dude copied twice. So then everyone that copies Irenaeus at that point, 100 years after Matthew was written, is given the green light. Now everybody says, well, duh, wrote by Matthew.
And maybe so. Like, I don't, and like I told you, I'm not too proud to say him. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, and I think that's key when anybody's having this argument. Just be honest about it, and then we can have an honest conversation. And here's the thing. With the New Testament and the Old Testament, it wasn't like they just sat down and like, all right, we're going to go here, and then we're going to write this next book, and we're all going to line this up. Like, you're finding these books, the church is finding these books. Even, a lot of the history of it wasn't even believed until the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Like,
caves in Qumran.
Yeah, but I mean,
there's no New Testament stuff in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
No, of course not. That's all. Isaiah's the only book that's fully there.
Yeah,
I mean,
and there's problems with that too. But Isaiah's scroll was pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. But. So it wasn't like they just sat down and it wasn't like if we're going to write a book today, all right, here's chapter 1. It's like, oh, we found this book.
Yeah, but
let's verify this guy.
I know, but like with Matthew and Mark, it's Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It seems like at one point Matthew does have Mark in front of him, and so like, so now it's time. Before I get too far, we have to talk about the eyewitness part of Matthew.
Well, we've got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay.
So you want to do that, or you want to skip slavery?
All right, we'll do that later. That'll have to be another day.
Okay, because that's going to be a good one too.
Eyewitness is important, right? Because you're saying that
everybody. By the way, I've just got another interview with a guy who's running for governor coming up next. So Joe knows I'm not rushing him, and we have a good enough relationship that this fall, obviously, even if I have to go on his show and we'll tie them together or something.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love that. So we say Matthew's an eyewitness. I'm saying I'm challenging that, right? Yeah. And so I think that's important. That's a big challenge. Like, and I understand that's a big challenge because. First of all, let's think about what Matthew actually witnessed. It's going to be really harder to tell than what you think.
Right.
Matthew is mentioned in chapter 9. Uh-huh. So how?
Chapter 9.
Yeah, that's
of Matthew.
Yeah, chapter 9 of Matthew. We see Matthew get introduced for the first time. We've already missed major miracle stories that are mentioned in Matthew. We've already mentioned the birth story. I've even mentioned private meetings that Matthew couldn't have been to, no matter what, even if
Where's
he was
he
around.
mentioned?
Matthew 9. It says. Matthew 9 is where they meet the tax collector, Matthew. Should be.
Maybe I just skipped it. Hold on.
It should be at the top. Is it? Am I missing?
Oh, I'm on 8. I just didn't go far enough.
Okay.
I
was like, oh, sorry, people. I am wrong.
No, it's okay. Getting into the boat, Jesus crossed over the sea and came down to us. Keep going. I'll be reading. I can do both.
Yeah. So Matthew is not mentioned until chapter 9. So, like, should we feel like... Is
9 verse 9?
Yeah, which is interesting. But no, so was Matthew running around with them and this is just a story out of place, or was Matthew not introduced until chapter 9? So did Matthew even witness the first 9 chapters?
Let me read it just so people know the context right here. So Matthew, and it's going to, it doesn't argue with you at all. Matthew chapter 9 verse 9. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man called Matthew. Which, have you ever met people that talk about themselves in third person? I mean, I really feel like that's what's happening right now.
But I mean, he says the exact same thing about Levi, but he probably had 2 different names.
Sitting in the tax collector's booth, which we talked about, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him.
Yeah, that's everything about Matthew in the entire book of Matthew.
So...
But and I'm saying, and it took. Well, he's mentioned later as part of the group.
Yeah, absolutely.
He never does anything of interest
part of
or anything.
Them boys.
Yeah, part of the boys, part of the 12.
Yeah,
and then the 11. So what I'm saying is, we've thrown the word eyewitness, right? Well, if Matthew's going in any type of order, which is interesting that he's the eyewitness and he actually copies Mark order pretty much exactly.
Well, let me ask you this, and I've never heard this. I don't know. It's just on top of my mind, so I'm not trying to necessarily argue. It's more of a real question.
Right.
When we're saying eyewitness, are we not saying the author of Matthew was the eyewitness?
So not Matthew? You're talking about whoever this dude was later that wrote? If it isn't Matthew, maybe
if it isn't, maybe this person was the eyewitness, and it's I don't know why it's titled
eyewitness the birth narrative.
Well, no, but I'm just saying from right. Dude's like, get off my yard. But I mean, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, I think that there's literally no way for us to know that.
No, there's not.
Absolutely no way. You can try this Matthew angle, and then we'll work it out. Then the reader can decide later, or the listener can decide, do I think Matthew wrote Matthew or not? You know what I mean?
Side note, it is transcribed if you guys want to pull that.
So check this out. In chapter 10, Jesus sends them out on missions.
Yep.
Okay, so it takes 9 chapters for Matthew to even be on the scene. Then by chapter 10, Jesus is sending him somewhere else. And then, like I said, this isn't in the Bible, and I don't want to add nothing to the Bible. I don't want to go there. I'm just saying, we do not get any other mention of Matthew back with the group from the missions until the week before Passover.
Right.
So there's a because I think they just picked Matthew. To be honest, I really do think that was Irenaeus needed these gospels to be tied to important people because he had heresies to fight. He had people to handle.
So he's out sniping
and finding people. And it's like, okay, if Matthew wrote this and then he was like, okay, and Papias has this quote already. There's some type of tradition that Matthew wrote something down. He wrote this one, right? And so that's where it gets shaky because it's like,
okay,
where am I going with this? Okay, so sends him out. He sends them out. If he leaves in verse 10, the next mention is like somewhere around 26.
Of 10?
Yeah, from 10 to 26. What exactly, from what Matthew tells us, if we are just trying to read it as straightforward as possible, what exactly did Matthew witness? Maybe a quarter of the stories? Maybe half the stories?
Right. So then, which brings back the question, an honest question that you've brought up. Are we holding Matthew as the author, or are we holding an author that just happened to title it Matthew?
I think so. I think the second. But if you believe that it's Matthew, that's fine. There's nothing against that. I just want to try to make people realize when they're throwing around eyewitness, what that means, and that it's deep. I don't think everybody that says Matthew's an eyewitness thinks he was following Jesus around with a clipboard. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But I think that people do overplay how much they think Matthew witnessed. Because I can look in the Bible and show you where it's like the most plainest, straightforward reading that I can get from this is that he may not have been around for a good bit of this journey.
Right. Well, but to your point, if it's not Matthew, maybe the author was.
Maybe he was, but I think that is something that we can't determine.
That is something we can't determine.
But I think okay, so we're looking at probability versus possibility.
Right,
Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
So, looking at a guy that takes 90% of what Mark has already wrote down, and then he's drawing from other sources. Luke and Matthew seem to draw some type of source, because there's things that are only in Matthew and Luke, and then there's things that are only in Mark and Luke, and then there's triple traditions that are in all three.
Correct.
Meaning that they're probably drawing from different.
Which is why you say that Mark was the first.
Right. Yeah.
And nothing says it isn't, right, in the Bible.
That's pretty much. No.
I mean,
it's the short. Look about Mark. It's the shortest, fastest pace. There's no mention of the virgin birth. There's no Sermon on the Mount, and there's no resurrection. Let's play pretend. All right. Let's pretend that Mark wrote second. He's looking at Matthew, and he says, "Oh, look, the virgin birth." Nah. Oh, look, Sermon on the Mount. No, that sucks.
Only the most important sermon ever given.
Yeah, and then you got to think. Mark 16:8 is where it ends. Actually, go to Mark 16:8, because this is going to shock you. You should run into some brackets. Do you see those beautiful brackets?
I don't.
Verse 9.
Like for the brackets or the citing of the other books?
Yeah, the brackets.
No, the brackets. Now after he had risen early on the first day, that one?
Okay, is there some type of brackets or footnote or something there?
Yeah.
What is the
footnote?
Can you read the footnote for me?
Luke 24:13 through 35?
No, Mark 16.
Yeah,
no, that footnote's telling you.
Later add W9 through, I don't know what that means.
Okay, here we go.
Later add verses 9 through 20.
Here we go.
So there's a later add.
These are not in the earliest manuscripts that we have.
Oh, okay.
It's more than likely that scribes added 9 through 21 to make it jive with the rest of them. Because at the ending of Mark, the first gospel written, it ends with the tomb being empty and the girls run away. Read verse 8 for me.
Verse 8.
Verse 8, yeah, 16:8.
They went out and fled from the tomb for trembling and astonishment, and gripped them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. So then it skips
The end. No, that's it. No,
okay.
Everything's done. That's it.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
End the scene. Mark says they ran away scared.
And so then the rest comes back later on, which this says in the footnote. Like this,
because that's also where you get the lines about letting snakes bite you and being able to drink poison and survive. Which the poor people, snake handler people, I wish somebody would tell them that those verses aren't in the original manuscript, brother.
He's up on all that.
Yeah, because you're letting a snake bite you, and that's literally not in the Bible.
Also, Jesus says when talking to the devil, it's written, tempt not the Lord your God. So we're going to stick with that.
Just a bad idea. So that's what I'm saying, though. So what I'm saying is, if we know Mark is the shortest, fastest, roughest Greek,
right?
But it seems to be the one that's written
It's a good
first.
Base,
right? Exactly. It's a good base.
And that's what you're saying is it's a good base for others to have built off
when
of.
Matthew does, let's read Luke 1 and I'll get out your way.
Okay. No.
Luke 1. This is super important.
Let me say this. Remind me about the good base. So Luke 1, what?
Luke 1. Just take
Luke 1:1.
Yeah, the introduction.
Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile an account, which goes to what you're saying, right?
There's a lot of accounts already.
To compile an account of the things accomplished among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, it seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it out for you consecutive order, most excellent Theophilus, so that you like the pronunciation. I knocked Theophilus out just
Theophilus
like
is nice,
baby.
They don't even know who that is.
No, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught.
Okay, cool. Lots of things there, right? So first thing he mentions is Luke knows that there's other gospels out there. They said they compile, and
many have undertaken.
Many, exactly. Luke has seen a bunch of gospels.
Yeah.
And Luke doesn't say, I've seen some other gospels, and they are the inspired word of God, and I'm going to write my own. He doesn't say that.
He's like, no, I need to tell you exactly what happened.
I need to tell you what happens, which if I firmly believe, and it's just, like I said, it's just a belief of mine. It's just from doing a whole bunch of studying. Luke had Mark. Now, whether Luke had Matthew and Matthew had Luke, that's a harder deal.
That's a bigger ask, right?
So when Luke looks at Mark,
Yeah.
he doesn't go, this is the divinely inspired, infallible word of God. He looks at it and goes, that's a decent try. I'm going to do better.
Maybe so. So let me say this. Back to one of my earlier examples. Because I'm a storyteller. You're a storyteller.
Right.
We wouldn't be doing this if we weren't.
Right.
But we hear somebody like, "Oh, what'd y'all do last night?" And it's like, we just went over to so and so's house and hung out and had a good time. I'd be like, no, that isn't what we did.
No, we did a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Man, first we hit the Whataburger. We knocked that out.
I did go to Whataburger. Yeah, I did that.
and then we did this, and then we accidentally set Joe's truck on fire. And then you'd be like, my truck? Oh, when he's through, I'll tell you about my truck. Yeah. And so then there's going to be this whole narrative. So if you have the base, which is Mark,
right? I would agree.
And I read it, I'm like, yeah, that happened. But let me tell you about this.
Okay, and that's fine.
Right?
That's fine.
Can we?
And I'm just saying that that is possibility. For sure.
And it's probable.
It could be probable. I'm just saying, that would be probable if the new information that is added lined up perfectly. Because then, or not perfectly, but closer. Then we have problems between Matthew and Luke where they look at it and they say, well, there's no birth story. And there's some type of tradition about Jesus being born more divinely. All right, well, it's time to write it. Well, then Matthew writes Magi and Herod, and Luke writes, shepherds.
We'll have to do another show on it because I just did a whole deep dive on Magi and why. I just don't have time to go into it.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. So I'm with you. Okay, let me say this, and then I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I love it.
And that being said, none of it makes me question my faith principles.
Good.
So, and that's not your intent, and that's what I need everybody. But your intent is to make sure people. We want to break down the walls and make sure we're taking in all of it,
right?
And making it, because if that's faith, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's reason all this out. Anyway, let me let you close with what you got coming up on your show, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah. So I've got episodes coming out. A big one tonight. I'm shooting with Cole. Shout out to Cole Yeldell, part 2. I literally knew nothing the last time I talked to him, so this will be a completely different conversation.
That'd be good,
dude. Yeah, man, I really respect him. I just want to close and say a little bit about all this stuff. If you want to get into this stuff, I encourage you to get into this stuff and look into it. And I would not be. I encourage you to not approach it and be scared and say, oh, this or that. I would just try to find that. I think it's important to approach these things like this because it's like, okay, somebody will tell me, okay, Jesus said this.
You gotta go find it.
I need to make sure Jesus said that, and okay, so like things like why would you want to read Matthew, Mark, and Luke like beside each other? We didn't even touch John at all. But like, why would you want to read them beside?
Because John's notably different.
Because sometimes Jesus says this in one, and then there's a word change in the other, or a sentence change in another, or they leave something out there. And I think it's important to think about why Matthew chose to add a word there. Why Luke chose to take a word out there, why a story is in for one and out for another. The structure, you see what I'm saying?
I think that's all fair.
And I think that's and there's other things. Like I think you should be, if anything, I want to challenge people that when somebody says something to them and it's set in stone. Somebody told me the other day, Jesus died when he was 33. I was like, cool, great. How do you know? And so that's like one of the most
strong statement.
Yeah, one of the most powerful questions I've been just asking about all this stuff is, okay, somebody will say something to me. Great, cool. How do we know? Like, I need sources. I need some logic.
It's just like writing your third grade paper. Who, when, and why.
Yeah. I need to know something more than just like, well, my pastor said Jesus died at 33. It's like,
no,
we can do some math and like, we can start working out Tiberius's reign and stuff like that if you want.
That's exactly right.
But just I want to encourage people to look deeper. The Bible's awesome. I'm at a weird spot with it. And I'm okay with that. And I never close the door on it. I'm not opposed to faith.
The Bible's very clear. If you seek earnestly, that's the key. And I believe that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. Like I said, none of this makes me question my faith principles. It is fun to talk about, and I appreciate the history because all this is people, right? All of this,
bunch of dudes.
All of this makes sense. All right, man, we're gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
That's Joe Teel, everybody.
Thank you, man.
Thank
Joe Teel
you.
Podcast on YouTube. Joe Teel Morning Show.
And I'll tie this episode to you as well.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, we're out of here. I hope God blesses each and every one of you. Don't be discouraged. Go look. Go do your research. Be educated about this stuff. And if not, just listen to me and Joe, and we'll tell you what we think. Yeah. All right, everybody, have a good day.